Conservatives say they're hunting for whoever leaked the draft opinion that would overturn Roe v. Wade. But our next guest says they might not have to look that far. See, there's the hot dog guy. In a new piece for New York Magazine, Jonathan Chait now notes how, quote, several days before Politico received the draft of Samuel Alito's ruling, the Wall Street Journal published an editorial cagily describing the court's internal deliberations, and that the editorial got quite specific about the internal breakdown of the vote. Jonathan asks, if a bank employee stole a small amount of money from the safe and then a few days later there was a huge robbery from the same safe, who would be your first suspect? And Jonathan Chait joins us now. Good to have you on with us. So what are you deducing from what the Wall Street Journal put in their editorial that connects us to this big question of who leaked the draft opinion, and why does it matter?
Yeah, I want to be clear that I have no idea who leaked this, and it definitely could have come from the left. But I wrote this because so much of the commentary from the right has simply assumed that the leak has come from the left and ignored the fact that we had a smaller leak 3 days before from the Wall Street Journal, which had the same effect that they're decrying, which is to put public pressure on the justices to rule in a certain way. That's the reason why they say this leak is so dangerous, is because it subjects the justices to this kind of lobbying. And that's exactly why the Wall Street Journal was leaked this early version. And they really had the inside scoop on the breakdown inside the court.
This is a really big, massive infraction on the court. To an act like this is being investigated by the marshal. Judge Roberts saying he's looking for the person who did this. How do we know it's a person, one person only? And how do we know it's someone directly related to the court, or perhaps more people? I just think there's a lot of different questions that people are making assumptions from the get-go, that there's just one leaker.
No, you're absolutely right. We don't know if it's one leaker. We don't know who did it. We don't know which side did it. I think the strange political dynamic is that Republicans didn't want to talk about the substance of Roe being overturned. So the leak became the message. And Mitch McConnell was all but explicit, saying, we want to talk about the leak. We don't want to talk about abortion rights. We don't want to talk about Roe. So that sort of led to the situation where conservatives were just foaming at the mouth about the leak and just assuming that it was the left that was doing it and calling for them to be disbarred or charged or put to death or whatever. So I think the rhetoric just got totally out of hand without any real, look at who might have been the leak in the first place.
Yeah, John, we were talking about that a little bit earlier. Fascinating to watch the approach when this overturning of Roe versus Wade for nearly a half century has been the holy grail for conservatives and for many Republicans. And then now that it's here in front of them, it looks like anyway, they're on the doorstep. They don't want to talk about the substance of it. They don't want to talk about the ruling. They want to talk about the leak. What do you read into that?
Yeah, it's really fascinating that they've been pursuing this goal for 50 years. But as everyone says, it's the dog that caught the car, and they don't want to discuss it. I think in a way the conservatives have been protected from the demands of their most right-wing faction by Roe v. Wade. Right? They didn't actually have to put up for vote measures that would criminalize abortion, that would subject women and doctors to legal prosecution, that would ban abortion in the first few weeks of the procedure. So now all of a sudden, the things this ruling has insulated them from are going to be right front square of the political debate, and they're not ready to enter that world yet.
Jonathan, I assume, like you, I've read massive amounts of pieces on the hunt for the leaker. And yet, among all the things that I've read, including in your very fine piece in New York Magazine, I have not read a certain date when this draft opinion may have been written. It could have been written a couple of months ago. It could have already been rewritten. Have you read anything that would give a date certain, around an approximate date certain, of when it was written?
No, and the speculation I've seen is that this was really an early draft that may well have been revisited since it's been leaked to the public. And that may have something to do with the motive of the leak. That's the leading theory for why it would have been conservatives, which, again, we don't know. But if it was this fear that Kavanaugh was pulling one of the other conservatives to his side to leave Roe intact, and that we may have already had a revision, that's the main theory, right? Is that this early draft that was intended to lock in all the conservatives behind the sweeping reversal of Roe.
All right, New York Magazine's Jonathan Chait, thank you so much. There's so many different prongs to this story. Right now, Democrats are trying to pass legislation to codify abortion rights. It's not going to pass because Republicans won't support it. So wonder what the point of that is. We'll talk about that.